In a small, forgotten town nestled among the fields of the South, there lived a boy who the world had mostly overlooked. His name was Malik Johnson. He was poor, dark-skinned, and often the target of cruel jokes at school. His clothes came from thrift stores. His lunch was a reminder of how little his family had, and his quiet demeanor made him seem invisible to those around him. But Malik had something they didn't know, something no one could see. He had a voice that could shake the earth if only it were given the chance to be heard. He had a song that had been buried beneath the weight of teasing and ridicule. One day, as part of a school talent show, Malik was asked to sing, but it wasn't because anyone believed in his talent. No, they asked him to sing as a joke, a laugh at his expense. What they didn't know, however, was that Malik was about to transform their world forever. This is the story of Malik Johnson, a story about finding your voice when the world expects silence, about turning your pain into power, and about how the loudest sound sometimes comes from the quietest place. Malik Johnson lived in the kind of neighborhood most people drove through without looking out the window. Cracked sidewalks, faded paint on the walls, and the faint scent of old dreams that had dried up like the clothes hanging from rusted lines in backyards. It was a forgotten corner of a southern town where nothing much happened, at least nothing. Good. And those who lived there were often forgotten too. 12-year-old Malik didn't mind the silence. In fact, he preferred it. It was easier not to be seen. The world, as far as Malik knew, was full of sharp things, words, looks, laughter. And he had already felt the sting of all of them. He was dark-skinned, beautifully so, though no one at Carter Middle ever told him that. His skin was the color of polished mahogany, but to some of the other kids, it was just another reason to poke fun. They called him things like midnight or shadow in the hallway, voices snickering as he passed with his head down, holding his old backpack close to his chest. His clothes were always one size too big, or 2 years out of style, passed down from neighbors, church donations, or thrift shops on the other side of town. The sneakers he wore had soles that whispered secrets to the ground each time he walked. He didn't complain. He had learned long ago that complaining didn't fix things, it just made them heavier. Malik lived with his grandmother, Miss Loretta, in a faded yellow house with a crooked porch and creaking floorboards that sang when you stepped on them, like the house was remembering footsteps from better days. Miss Loretta had raised him since he was 3, after his mama, young and already tired, left town with a suitcase and never looked back. No one ever talked about it. That was just the way it was. Miss Loretta was all he had, and that was more than enough. She was a small woman with silver streaks in her hair, brown hands worn from years of scrubbing, sewing, and holding. Her voice carried a quiet power, like a church hymn sung low but strong. Even when her joints ached and her knees needed rest, she'd still hum gospel in the kitchen as she fried cornbread or stirred a pot of greens. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and a kind of love you couldn't see but always felt, like heat from a stove you hadn't turned off. At school, Malik tried his best to disappear. He sat in the back. He didn't raise his hand unless he had to. He ate lunch alone, near the back wall of the cafeteria, listening to the hum of voices and pretending he didn't hear his name when it was called with a smirk or a sneer. He was different, and everyone could see it. He didn't talk about sports. He didn't wear the latest kicks. He didn't brag or joke or strut the way the other boys did. Malik didn't know how to do all that. What he did know, what he never told anyone, was how to sing. Not just hum, not just carry a tune. Sing. He sang when the house was quiet and Miss Loretta had dozed off in her chair. He sang to the peeling walls and cracked ceiling. He sang to his dreams, soft and slow, afraid even they might laugh. But no one knew that. Because in the world outside his home, his voice was just one more thing that made him strange. And strange, at Carter Middle School, was dangerous. Malik didn't have friends, at least not real ones. There were a few kids who nodded at him in class or let him borrow a pencil. But most just ignored him. or worse. One of the worst was Chase. Chase Montgomery had the kind of blonde hair and blue eyes that showed up in local ads for baseball camps. His dad owned a car dealership. His mom was on the school board. Chase had everything Malik didn't: money, clothes, confidence, and he made sure everyone knew it, especially Malik. "Yo, thrift store," Chase would say loud enough for the hallway to hear, tossing a smirk over his shoulder as Malik walked. You lose your clothes in a time machine?" The other kids would laugh. Not because the joke was funny, but because they knew they were supposed to. Malik never said anything back. He kept walking, face calm, breath steady. He had learned the art of silence. But silence doesn't mean weakness. It just means the world hasn't heard you yet. The decision came quietly, like a prayer whispered in the middle of the night. Malik sat at the kitchen table with a cup of lukewarm cocoa in his hand. Miss Loretta had gone to bed early again, her body worn out by the aches that never seemed to sleep. The house was still. The fridge hummed. The walls creaked. Outside, crickets sang their own quiet chorus under the moon. He had spent days thinking about what to do. Everyone was expecting him to fail, or worse, to humiliate himself. And yet, something inside him had shifted. Mr. Reggie's words stuck to him like heat after the rain. "They laugh 'cause they scared you'll shine." He needed a song, but not just any song. He opened a drawer in the kitchen and pulled out a weathered songbook, edges curled, pages yellowed. Miss Loretta's. Her most treasured hymns were inside. Malik thumbed through it slowly, the smell of old paper rising like incense. There it was. Page 62. His eye is on the sparrow. He didn't need to read the words. He already knew them. He had grown up with this song echoing in the background of every hard day. Miss Loretta would hum it while cooking, sing it while rocking him to sleep, whisper it when the pain in her knees brought tears to her eyes. It was her song, their song. Now, it would be his. That night, alone in his room, Malik stood in front of the mirror. He took a deep breath and sang the first line. "Why should I feel discouraged?" The note trembled. His voice cracked. His heart pounded. But he kept going. He sang softly at first, then louder. Slowly, his voice stopped shaking. His chest opened. His shoulders relaxed. The room seemed to listen as if it had waited years to hear him. "I sing because I'm happy." The last note held in the air, warm and full. For the first time, he wasn't afraid of his voice. He was in awe of it. By Tuesday, it was no longer a secret. Malik Johnson, the quiet kid with the hand-me-down shoes, was going to sing in the talent show. "Wait, Malik!" someone shouted in the hallway. "Yeah, for real." "Word is, he picked some church granny song," said a girl near the lockers, snorting. "Probably sings like a dying raccoon," Chase joked, drawing howls of laughter from his circle of friends. Designed. Rumor spread like wildfire. Some kids were excited in that cruel way, when you want to see a disaster just to feel better about your own mess. Others were just curious. Malik had been a background shadow for so long, they barely remembered he had a voice at all. Some teachers tried to be supportive. Mrs. Talley, the English teacher, gave Malik a tight-lipped smile in the hallway and said, "Looking forward to your performance, Malik." But even she didn't sound convinced. In the cafeteria, kids leaned across tables, whispering, pointing. Some pulled out their phones. "Bet he chokes on stage," someone laughed. Malik heard it all. He pretended not to. Every chuckle was a stone in his stomach. Every whisper, a cold breeze down his back. But that night, when he got home, he closed the door, picked up his songbook, and sang anyway. He sang into the fear. And every night, the fear got quieter. "Again," Mr. Reggie said gently, nodding. From the back of the old music room, Malik stood near the piano, gripping a pencil like a microphone. His palms were sweaty. His heart thudded like a drumline. But he nodded. Why should I feel discouraged? The note came cleaner this time. Not perfect, but stronger. Better, Mr. Reggie said. But you ain't feeling it. Don't just say the words, boy. Live them. Malik swallowed and tried again. They met every afternoon. Mr. Reggie would unlock the old music room after school, prop open the windows, and lean on his mop as Malik rehearsed. The janitor never smiled wide, but he nodded. Sometimes he even hummed along. On the third day, Malik sat down, breathing hard. How'd you know all this stuff anyway? Mr. Reggie looked at him for a long time. You ever hear of the Delta Harmony Choir? Malik blinked. The gospel group that played at the fair last year? Yeah. I helped start that choir. Me and my cousin Alvin used to tour Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia. I was lead tenor. Folks used to say I had a golden voice. What happened? Malik asked. Reggie sighed. Life. Mama got sick. Daddy left. Bills stacked up. I stayed home. Took care of family. Music. It didn't pay the rent. He looked at Malik then. Really looked. But if I'd had someone to push me, maybe I would have kept singing. He pointed to Malik's chest. You got a gift, son. Don't bury it 'cause other people scared of it. Malik nodded, his throat tight. That night he sang every note, with the weight of generations behind it. It happened one Thursday evening. Miss Loretta had one of her bad days. She sat in her chair by the window, wrapped in 2 blankets despite the heat, her eyes tired. Malik entered the room holding the old songbook. Grandma, he said softly, I want to sing for you. Her eyes lifted, cloudy but warm. My sparrow. Song? He nodded, and then he began. The room faded. The world disappeared. He sang not just for her, but for every hard night, every quiet dinner, every prayer she had whispered with trembling hands. His voice filled the space with light. When he finished, he looked up. Miss Loretta was crying, quiet tears slipping down her wrinkled cheeks. She reached beside her chair and pulled open a small box. Inside was a silver pendant on a thin chain. It shimmered faintly, shaped like a sparrow with wings outstretched. This was your granddaddy's, she said. He wore it when he sang in the church choir. Said it reminded him why he sang in the first place. Now, I want you to have it. Malik. Took it, speechless. The metal felt warm in his hand. Miss Loretta smiled weakly. He'd be proud of you, Malik, just like I am. The night before the talent show, Malik couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the pendant clutched in his hand. The room was quiet, too quiet. Even the crickets outside seemed to hold their breath. His mind played loops of what could go wrong. The mic not working, his voice cracking. The laughter. He drifted off somewhere between fear and exhaustion. And then he dreamed. He stood on a stage bigger than any he'd seen. The lights were blinding. The crowd was faceless, but he felt the heat of their stares. Laughter echoed from all sides, a tidal wave of it. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Then, through the noise, a familiar voice, soft, strong, sure. His eye is on the sparrow. Miss Loretta. Her voice was inside him, lifting him. He tried again. I sing because I'm happy. This time it came. The crowd fell silent. Then they rose to their feet, one by one, until the sea of faces was standing. When he awoke, his pillow was damp with tears. But he felt something new. Peace. The morning of the talent show, the sun rose. Slow and heavy. Malik stood at the bathroom mirror adjusting his collar. His second-hand white button-down was ironed crisp and tucked neatly into navy slacks. Around his neck hung the silver sparrow pendant, resting just over his heart. Miss Loretta watched from the doorway, her cane in one hand. a proud smile on her face. "You ready, baby?" she asked. Malik nodded, though a storm still swirled inside. Him. His stomach churned. His palms were clammy. But something inside him, some anchor forged in prayer, love, and pain, kept him steady. At school, the auditorium buzzed with noise. The folding chairs were packed with students, teachers, and parents. The stage was lit by 2 aging spotlights, and a cracked banner above it read, "Carter Middle Talent Showcase, 7th Annual." Malik waited backstage, breathing slowly, hands clasped. Other. Students performed before him, dancers, rappers, a girl who played violin, a comedy act that got polite laughter. Then, next up, we've got Malik Johnson singing a gospel song. Snickers rolled through the crowd. Someone shouted, "Oh no!" Someone else laughed, "Get your phones out!" But Malik stepped onto the stage. He walked slowly, shoulders square, heart pounding. The bright lights hit him. The microphone stood tall. He could barely see the audience, but he felt them. All those eyes, waiting, judging. He took a breath, then another, and then he sang. "Why should I feel discouraged?" His voice, low and trembling, filled the space. At first, the audience was confused. They expected a joke, a crack in his voice, a stumble. But instead, they got a sound full of soul and depth, trembling with truth. Why should the shadows come? Malik's voice began to grow, warm, resonant, rich like syrup in morning sunlight. You could hear a pin drop. Every eye turned toward the stage. Phones lowered, mouths closed. Even Chase, sitting in the 3rd row with his phone ready to record, found his thumb frozen above the screen. "I sing because I'm happy." Malik closed his eyes and let go. He wasn't just singing now. He was releasing all the pain, all the shame, every laugh he'd endured, every whisper behind his back. Every moment he thought he wasn't enough. "I sing because I'm free." The room transformed. Tears welled in eyes. Teachers stared in stunned silence. A few parents nodded along, hands pressed to hearts. And from the back row, Miss Loretta, dressed in her best hat and Sunday scarf, whispered, "Thank you, Lord." As the final note floated into the rafters and faded, the silence lingered for half a second longer. Then came the applause. It started with one student, then another, then the teachers, and then the whole auditorium stood. A standing ovation. Malik stood still, stunned, his heart beating like a drumline in his chest. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. His eyes locked on the crowd, on the tears, the faces, the hands clapping just for him. He stepped back, nodded once, and exited the stage. Backstage, teachers rushed to meet him. Mrs. Talley wrapped him in a hug. Even the principal wiped his eyes. And then came Chase. For a moment, the boy just stared at him. "Yo," he said, voice awkward. You were good." Malik just nodded. "Thanks. No gloating, no revenge. Just peace." He had already won. Later that evening, Malik and Miss Loretta sat on the front porch in 2 plastic lawn chairs. Fireflies danced in the yard. The night was warm, the stars above kind. Miss Loretta sipped sweet tea and looked over at him, smiling that quiet, full smile only grandmothers know how to give. "You didn't just sing today," she said. "You testified." Malik chuckled. "Felt like I was flying." She nodded slowly. "That's the spirit, baby. That's what it feels like when you walk in your gift." They sat in silence a while longer. Malik looked down at the pendant on his chest. "Granddaddy ever get nervous when he sang?" "Every single time," she said with a laugh. "But he never let fear take the mic." Malik looked up at the stars and whispered, "Me neither." The next day at school, everything had changed. People didn't look at him the same. Some kids gave him high fives, Some just nodded respectfully. No one laughed. No one whispered. Few even asked him what song he was going to sing next time. Malik didn't smile big or walk with swagger. He didn't need to. He walked in silence, proud and grounded, like a tree that had weathered a storm and found its roots still deep in the earth. In the hallway, someone called out, "Yo, Sparrow Boy!" A few others laughed, but not mockingly. It was a nickname now, earned, not given. Malik didn't mind. The sparrow had flown, and he wasn't coming down. The talent show ended, but the effects of Malik's performance kept spreading. By the end of the week, the school principal called Malik into his office, not for punishment, but to shake his hand. "Son," he said with a firm grip, "I've been in this school 22 years. I've never seen a moment like that. You reminded us why we have these shows in the first place." Malik just nodded, not sure what to say. Later, Mr. Reggie found him in the hallway. "You sang like a man who knew where he came from," he said, clapping a hand on Malik's shoulder. "Now don't stop. Keep going. This world's already got enough folks who gave up." Malik smiled, quiet and proud. He didn't just walk the halls now. He moved through them. A student, a singer, a symbol. A week after the show, Mr. Reggie handed Malik a surprise. It was a plain key on a lanyard. Attached to it was a little tag with the words, "Music Room Storage." "What's this?" Malik asked. Reggie grinned. "I asked the principal for something. They cleaned out the old practice room. It's yours now." Malik's mouth fell open. When he unlocked the room, he found an old upright piano, a dusty microphone stand, a stack of music books, and a speaker system from 2004. But to him it was a palace. He spent hours there after school, practicing, writing, learning. Sometimes, Miss Loretta would come sit in the corner with her tea and knit while he sang. Sometimes other kids peeked in and stayed. Eventually, the music room wasn't just his. It became a refuge, a workshop, a heartbeat. In the spring, the school announced a district-wide music showcase. Mr. Reggie turned to Malik and said, "Time for folks outside this town to hear that voice." Malik worked harder than ever. He chose a mix of gospel and soul, something modern but rooted in the old truths. At the showcase, schools from across the region performed. Malik was the final act. He walked out on stage with a calm he had earned through fire. When he sang, the crowd rose like a wave. Parents cried. Judges stood. He didn't win first place, but it didn't matter. Afterward, one of the organizers approached Miss Loretta. "Does your grandson have a demo? We know a few people who'd love to hear more." Miss Loretta just smiled. "Not yet, but he's on his way." Word of Malik's performance made its way through town. The local paper ran a story. Carter Middle student moves crowd with voice, message of hope. Churches invited him to sing. He even got asked to perform at a citywide youth event. But the most powerful moment came when a younger boy named Javon, a fifth grader, approached him shyly in the cafeteria. "Hey," he said, almost whispering, I write poems. I heard you sing, and it made me want to read one out loud." Malik knelt to Javon's level. "You should," he said. "Your voice matters." A week later, Javon stood on the cafeteria stage and read his first poem aloud. The crowd clapped. Malik smiled from the back. Sparrows were starting to fly. On the last day of the school year, Malik found a letter inside his locker. No name. Just folded paper, soft with wear. He opened it slowly. "Dear Malik, I'm sorry I ever laughed at you. I see now you're braver than most of us ever will be. You showed me something real, and I won't forget it. Keep singing. From someone who needed to hear you." Malik folded the letter and placed it inside the songbook Miss Loretta gave him. Not all apologies come with names, but some don't need them. Summer came. Cicadas hummed. Miss Loretta watered her roses while Malik sat on the porch with a notebook in his lap and a pencil behind his ear. He was writing new lyrics now, not just the old gospel songs, but his own music, born from the soil of his life, laced with truth, soaked in love. And one day he looked up and whispered to the wind, "Thank you." Not to anyone in particular, just to the world, to God, to music, for finding him, for carrying him, for making a boy from the forgotten corner into a name they would never forget. And far off in the sky, a sparrow flew across the clouds, silent but sure, like a song in flight. It had been 10 years since that day in the Carter Middle Auditorium. Malik Johnson now stood backstage at the Apollo Theater in Harlem. The real one. Not a school stage, not a church rec hall, but one of the most iconic music venues in the world. He was 22 now, tall, stronger, wiser, still humble. The silver sparrow pendant still hung around his neck. He took a deep breath. The audience outside buzzed in anticipation. His first live gospel soul album had gone viral online, and this was his official debut show. He closed his eyes, and suddenly he was back there, in that cafeteria, in that corner, alone, afraid. He remembered the laughter. He remembered the heat in his face, but he also remembered Miss Loretta's voice. "You didn't just sing. You testified." He stepped forward into the light and began to sing. After the show, Malik stood at the back of the venue. People lined up to meet him. Some cried. Some just shook his hand. One woman whispered, "I brought my son to hear you tonight. He was afraid to speak at school. Now he wants to try." That night, Malik sat in his hotel room reading messages on his phone, from teachers, from old classmates, from kids across the world who had watched a video of his original middle school performance that was now viral, captioned, "A boy they laughed at, until he sang." He pulled out a worn notebook. Inside were the original lyrics to "His Eye is on the Sparrow," tucked behind them, the letter from his old classmate, still folded soft at the edges. He smiled. Some voices are born for arenas, others are born for something bigger, healing, changing, building. Malik had learned that real power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums in the voice of a child who dares to sing. Back in his hometown, the music room at Carter Middle now bore a new sign. Malik Johnson Music Room. Sing because you're free. Mr. Reggie had retired, but he still visited often. Miss Loretta, now a bit slower in step, still came to the front row every time Malik sang at home. Javon, the once quiet poet, now ran a citywide youth arts program, and the young kids who walked the halls of Carter Middle, they knew the story. They whispered it like legend. There was this boy once, poor, picked on, quiet. They made him sing as a joke, and when he opened his mouth, the world stopped. Malik Johnson never asked to be famous. He only ever wanted to be heard. But the sound of his voice, that voice they once mocked, now lived in thousands of others who had once been afraid. And somewhere, in some forgotten corner of another school, another child heard his story, took a breath, and began to sing, and the sparrow, still small, still steady, kept soaring.